recording, and I gotta go back and remember. I think I was focusing on the objectives. So we have the objective manager all the way at the top. We have this objective reach targets here. This is like the midway, the middle level communication between our high level game manager, and the really low point, or the point of contact with the player, will be these checkpoints that have colliders and have pickup objects. All right. So here we have objective manager, objective reach, target, which is inheriting from objective, and pickup object, which is inheriting from target object. Yep, there's mono behavior. All right, so pickup target, pickup object. On start, we register. And register is not here, so it must be over in target object. Here, register. So go to the objective class. We don't need to know we don't need to communicate or need to figure out where the objects are objective. We just go to the class and we say on register pickup. And so this is an event call. Remember Unity actions. And there's a question mark here. There's a null operator. So this is saying like, hey, is anyone registered? Is anyone listening to this event on register pickup? If so, I'm going to invoke that event, that action, with a reference to myself. And if nobody is listening, don't bother invoking the event because nobody's listening. There's no methods to call that nobody's interested in listening. So we're going to invoke this method on this class with a reference to myself. So if we go over to objective, public static action receives a target object. That was a target object. Static, it's class based. So on register pickup. So is anyone listening? Yes, someone is listening. So on the objective side, we have the enable method called once when this component becomes enabled, and it registers its own methods to this. So I was saying last time that that's a little weird because it's itself registering event listeners to its own event. But the reason for this is that target object could just say, hey, objective event, just invoke you if anyone's listening. And another method on the objective object is listening to it. And so the benefit of this is it's saying that the target objects don't need to go out into the Unity game scene and hunt around and find objectives. Or you, the developer, don't need to like drag and drop references, which can be annoying. So they're calling the class and then calling the event on the class so that they don't have to do the object references. So whatever. There's always a million different ways to get the same thing done. This person decided that they wanted to do that. But ultimately, what does that mean? This is the only method that is listening to that event. The listener just happens to be on the same objective object. So the target object comes in, called pickup. And if that game mode is not the same as the game mode of the objective, then we say, hey, I don't even care about you, and we just return out. If that pickup has the same game mode as the objective, then we say, that's great. I have a list of target objects. I'm going to add you to it because I'm interested in you. So let's see what this game mode, time limit, and over here, game mode, time limit. So enums, customized lists. So anyway, this pickups list is part of objective that keeps track is a collection of all the pickups we are interested in, or target objects that we are interested in. And then we say, all right, I gathered one of these. Let me increment this integer so I keep track of the total number of target objects or pickups that I need to keep track of during the game. me being the objective object. All right, so if we go back to pickup object, that's what was happening with register on start. And what else pickup object is doing? This. So on trigger enter, this is the connection point between the player and this pickup, this target object, is that there happens to be a collider on the checkpoint right here, and it's a trigger, so the player collider can just go through it, and this event will be triggered when they touch, and this other collider represents the player, and this is doing some checks to see if the this one's pretty straightforward. If the other game object compare tag player, so if we go on to player here, we can see that it's tagged as player, so that would be true. In that case, I don't know why they have to do this check. So if the layer that the other game object layer, which is ignore raycast, is on this layer 2, whichever ignore raycast means. So I guess it's doing a check with the tag and the player in the layer. Sure, I don't know why. But so if layer mask dot value, so when you see this and this, these are bitwise operators. It's a little bit more advanced for this class. But it's saying if the layer, I think this layer mask on the target object. So here, so it's default, which is 0. So it's like saying is 0 and 1. So this isn't a true and false. This isn't a Boolean. This is a bitwise and is some type of bit less than whatever the layer that the player object is on. So it's an integer. Oh, sorry, it's not bit. Int is an int. I thought this was bitwise comparisons. So if int and int, interesting. That is not a C++ thing. That is bitwise. It's a way to determine if it's odd or even, maybe. Okay. So this is saying, an integer variable in C# is 32 bits size. This is just a way of checking that the last bit, the smallest bit, is either a 1 or a 0. So if it's a 0, it would be an even number. And if it was a 1, it would be an odd number because the smallest bit just represents 0 or 1, not 2 to the 0. So anyway, this is just saying if it's odd and then comparing to this layer, which would be the layer that this game object is in, which is 0. Oh, sorry, this is the player. The player's layer was 2. So to me, it's saying our layer is 0. So 0 and 1, saying this would be false because we're even. And then what is this operator to 2? It's just these are shifters. This is you're not going to see this. I think it's really stupid for game developers to get involved in this because ultimately bitwise operators it just saves a lot of processing time in memory because you're operating on bits and not larger types. But this is more for like definitely a deeper CS concept, and you don't need to save the processing for this. And it's like a whole other area of CS you have to learn that is such a small part of game development. So anyway, indicates the bits to be shifted to the right. Is that the direction we're going? Yeah. No, left. Okay, so it shifts some. You'll see this a lot in networking because when they have to do with IP addresses and stuff, they do this a lot. But you're not going to see this in game development. Yeah, and it flips the one that's on the left to the right. Yeah, but why would they? So if you move this whole thing to the left, does it equal whatever this layer? So 2. Yeah. Okay. So 2 would be 2 to the 1 would be 0 or 2. So that would be the next bit to the left. So this would be like in that place it would be a 1. So if you shift it and if these two equal. All right. So basically, if you can, if this 0 gets shifted, if it's a 1, it gets shifted to the 2's place. Will be a 2. Sure. Honestly, they could have just this. So this is saying basically, was the other thing a player, and was the player on the same physics layer? Than on collect. But if they're on different if these two layers aren't going to interact with each other, like in project settings, I kind of showed you this physics matrix thing here. If they're not going to be allowed to interact, they're not going to actually trigger this on trigger enter method. So I think it's overly complicated. But sometimes you'll see it, and that was a little introduction to that. Anyway, on collect. So on collect, if we do have a sound, we're going to play a sound effect. If we have a VFX, we're going to play that VFX and then destroy it after a certain amount of time. And then we're going to unregister ourselves. So objective.unregister pickup. So this is interesting that there's no question mark, there's no operator. It's just saying evoke this method even if no one's listening to it. So they're already assuming that somebody is listening to it. Which is here. This is the listener. And so this target object comes in here. And if the game modes don't match, then don't do anything. If the game mode is lapse, we're not even in that game mode, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Else, reach checkpoint with number of pickups. So let's just say we had 3, now we took 1 away, now we're down to 2. So this is over an objective. Oh no, it's abstract. It's not defined in objective. So it must be. Oh, you're gonna reach checkpoint. So if completed, I guess this is some bool, and right now it's not gonna be. It'll be false. We're still gonna do some processing. So if must collect all pickups, which is probably going to be, yeah, it's true. Then whatever number of pickups we have, say we drop down to 2, then pickups to be this other integer will be set to 2 as well. And then take the number of pickups and subtract whatever number this comes in, which is usually looks like it's going to be 1. And then that's the number we have here. And then int target remaining must collect all pickups. So here you see the question mark again. In this situation, it's called the ternary operator. Similar. So it's like saying we're going to create a variable type int, And what are we going to set it equal to? Well, first we go through a Boolean expression. In this one, this expression is pretty simple. It's just a bool variable, so it's either true or false. And if this is true, then this gets set to this. And then if it's false, this gets set to that. So true or false, ternary operator, this is the answer if it's true. And then you do a colon. Sorry, someone's mic is on. Let's see, I have a question. And then this is the answer if it's false. So this is, in the game mode we're in right now, this is true. So this remaining gets placed into this variable and not this. I'm going to have to go, somebody's got their mic on in Zoom. Just give me a second. Okay. So then after all those calculations, if target remaining is 0, then complete objective. So this is like a UI thing. This is updating that, going out to the UI. So we're still not covering the UI right now, so I'm just going to leave that alone. Else if target remaining is 1, this is going out to the UI as well. Else if we still have more than one target. So it's just the strings that are being set that are going back and updating the UI. But let me just finish recapping here and then we can move to the UI. What's the difference between remaining and pickup to complete pickup total? Doesn't imply the same thing. Sorry, what line do you see? Oh, remaining, that's coming in here, you mean? So reach checkpoint, line 46. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so if this is true, depends on what this was set to. So if this is true, yes, remaining and target remaining are the same thing. But if this is false, then target remaining is going to be set to pickups to complete minus the pickup total here. So it'd be pickups to complete. It would turn into number of pickups total, which it was set to, but then subtract remaining. So let's take a look here. So public and pickups to complete set to 5. I don't think this stays as 5. No, it gets overwritten here. It gets set to 3, which makes sense. We have 3 pickups. I think the rest of these must be coming from objective. Yeah, number of pickups and stuff. So, number of pickups total. So, okay, and start here. Let's see. If we have to pick up everything, then number of pickups to complete. This gets overwritten right away. So, number of pickups total is overwriting it. Sorry, I muted you because your sound's coming through your mic. I'm just gonna mute you again unless you have a question. Okay, so here we have number of pickups in the parent class objective, and this means that it's a public get and a private set. So I told you that variables are public or private, and private by default. But when you see this thing, this getters and setters, it's the opposite. If there's nothing set here, it's public. So that means any other object can come out and reference this and get it, can read it, but you can only set it from within objective. So let's see where this is being set. So on register pickups. Oh, okay. So when a game first starts and all the pickups call and say, "Hey, register me," this is where this number is getting added up here. So number of pickups, then it gets to 3. And then here on start, pickups get set to this. So this thing gets overwritten. This shouldn't be public because right on start, it's just getting overwritten. So that's a little confusing. So this 3 out here, like, does nothing and it shouldn't be exposed unless you just want to read it, unless it's a way to, like, easily read the variables, but it's kind of deceptive because it's getting overwritten right here. But okay, so that's how this gets set to 3 and this gets set to 3. And so what's happening is on reach checkpoint, this remaining comes in. And then we go out to the objective class and grab this and set this equal to it. So this is always kind of being updated based on this one coming from objective. And then we have this M pickup total, which I think is also coming from in here. Yeah, M pickup total coming from objective. So this thing is just number of pickups here, subtract whatever was coming up through here. So we started at 3, a 1 came in here. So now this is 2. And then this is true. So we take this, which is a 1 coming in. This is a 1. So target remaining is 1. It's a little weird. Let me just double check that. So who's calling this? No, my fault. Number of pickups remaining. I think the way they're using their variables is a little confusing here, but it's alright. So if this was 3 and this is 3 minus 1, then sorry, that would be a 2. So 2 comes in. Alright. So this was a 3, this gets set to a 3. This is actually a 2. So this is 3 minus 2. So the number of pickups that this is really like the pickups that you've done, that you've picked up, not that are left over. So it'd be 1. So you have 1 pickup that you have successfully done. So then target remaining must pickups. So this comes in as a 2, so that's fine. This becomes a 2. So normally these are the same thing. Unless this is a false, that it's not necessary for you to collect all the pickups to complete the objective. So then it becomes this, which is a 3, minus how many you've picked up, which is a 2, which is still this. So I think this is just a case of overcomplicated bad code because it just seems like it's coming out to the same number. So anyway, this is a 2. Yeah. And you'd have to talk to the developer. Well, I think he was expanding this into different game types, making it more robust. But as I just walked through those 2 cases with 3 objectives and this being either true or false, it seems to come out the same to me. So I just think it's just overly complicated code right here. They don't need as many variables. Maybe they were opening up the number of like types of games and they just didn't expand it beyond this. In either case, this is a bunch of UI stuff that yet to get to the UI about. Is it kind of set to where I can add other pickups and they be considered by this, or is it reserved just for checkpoints? I don't know if they have an idea of other pickups built out. I mean, there's got to be this idea of power-ups because I definitely, I was explaining to you that part where there's like power-ups with the base stats. Let me just see if they have anything else in here about pickups. I don't think so. Yeah, they don't. I was just looking if they had any prefabs for like power pickups or something. I don't see it. But let me see if you use pickup objects, it looks like they're related to the time limit, crash, or lapse game mode. This is spawn prefab on pickup. Um, no, this is like sparks, and this is not like I was thinking. Would it be like a pickup, like a spawn something that you actually pick up? No, this is just like spawning VFX when you go through a pickup. Um, let's see if you have a pickup. Let me just see what's underneath here. Checkpoint ring. This is just the mesh. Okay. So if you did want to reuse some of this, like say this trigger and this pickup object, um, well, you definitely have this on trigger enter, and this is optional if you want stuff like this. Yeah, what you could do is if you want to pick up like a power pickup or something that impacts the player's stats or gives them a score or something, you could reuse this checkpoint and change the mesh and stuff, but change the game mode to something else like crash or lapse, just something that other than the main game. And the point of that is that when it registers and when it unregisters itself, then um, when it calls out to the objective, and register, here we go, register pickup. So notice like it says like if the game mode is different, just return. Don't like put this into the objectives pickup and monitor it and give out like notices about it. So then you can basically ignore this, like this register and this unregistered thing like won't happen. And you could just zero out like this time gained right here. So like this right here, just zero that out. It won't impact the game time. And then you can write like another line of code or something, and you can do whatever. Like you can have your custom logic here. So it depends what you want the pickup to do. But if you want the pickup to like boost the player, let me just jump back over here. I'm guessing is that what you want to do? Like a pickup that would impact the player's stats or something? General brainstorming. Yeah, well, I'll leave it at that part then right now. So basically, what I would do is um, I don't want the objective to register it because it's not part of the main game. So I would just switch out the game mode, zero out the time gained. So then this doesn't do anything, that doesn't do anything. You could add a sound effect if you wanted to. You could add like a VFX thing. And before it gets destroyed here, you could do something. So you could either like reuse this script, or you could kind of duplicate it. But let's say if we wanted to reuse this script, if you did want to put like some custom logic here, don't want it to run. I would just do a simple check, like I would just add something to it, like either check the game mode, like if you're gonna stay with the time limit here, then you could just say, here's the game mode. So something like if game mode does not equal game mode.time limit, then you know that this isn't one of the primary objectives. This isn't like a ring or something. So you could put your custom logic in here. This is where you could connect up to like the player or whatever you want to do from here. Okay. Yep, sure. So that was a pickup object communicating up to the objective, and the objective managing it. Yep. And then it looks like the objective registers, goes out, and it's the same kind of pattern here. When the objective starts up, let's see, it's setting the time on the time manager, it's waiting a frame, setting some strings that must be going out to the UI. And then here, it's registering itself. And so that register here is in the objective class. So it's going up to the objective manager. It's going to the class. It doesn't need to worry about a reference to the actual object of it. It's going to register the objective with a reference to itself. And so up on the objective manager, you have the same situation where there's this class static action, and all it's doing is on enable. There's just a method down here that's listening to it. So ultimately, it's this method that's getting called with the objective reference, and it's got a list of objectives, and it's just adding that objective. And then part of the register, it's just, again, messing around with it's going out and finding the UI that's related to the objective and the UI that's related to the notification UI element. And it's going out to them, and it's registering its objective with them as well. And maybe we'll move on to that today. I don't know, but I'm not starting up with the UI until I finish this stuff. So yep, reset. Cool. So this goes up to this level and registers itself with the objective manager. And ultimately, the objective, at this point, we're back basically with the game flow manager when we're in the update loop, and it's saying, hey, if game state is not in play, which we're in play, when the situations when we're not in play is like that opening cinematic, that 3, 2, 1 countdown, or when we're like in win-loss and it's fading out, or when we pause the game. But we're not there right now, we're here. So if the objective manager, we're over in the game flow manager right now, are allowed objectives complete, so that's this method call. So if the objectives are, the list we have is at 0, we can return false. Otherwise, we do have objectives in our list still left. And then we check if they're blocking. So this was a little weird terminology. You meant, are you blocking like the win condition? Are you still in like a unresolved state, unfinished state? So if we ever go through the list and we hit any objective that is still blocking, not completed yet, we just kick out, we just return false. And if we loop through the whole thing and never hit that, then we return true. And so if this ever returns true, meaning we were able to go through all of this, all the objectives, and we never kicked out early, then we can end the game with true. End the game with, yep, you got all the objectives, you're in a great state. And then we do another check. If the time manager is finite, the state meaning like, yes, there's a finite amount of time in our game, and the time is over, then we lose the game. Alright, so basically this thing is getting hit every update frame and checking if we're winning. Alright, so just repeating what we went through and spent Tuesday on. So let me know if you have any questions. Since we started to hit upon the UI with the objectives, I'll probably move over there unless there's anything. So, here we can see elements of our UI already being rendered to the scene, even though haven't started the game yet. Looks like we have an end game fade canvas. If I just turn it on, I was hoping it would kind of darken out the areas. That must be done ramping up over time or something. The alpha here. Let me see. Nope. All right. Well, when we get to that, I'll check the code. So it's not turned on in a good situation right now. I'll turn it back off. So we have the game HUD, heads-up display, and there's a lot going on here. We got a frame rate counter, notification HUD manager, objective HUD manager, display message manager, a timer HUD manager, feedback flash HUD, an audio source. And then underneath it, we have stuff here too. So we have, I'm just turning this on and off, seeing if I can see it now. Raised countdown canvas. So this must be that 3, 2, 1 that gets played. We have a feedback flash. So I don't know if I've seen this in action, but there must be something happens and it's trying to call your attention. It looks like it's red. And, okay. It's under these canvas groups. I was trying to figure out what this, there's this overriding alpha right here. So these canvas groups will just kind of manage all the elements underneath it. So I guess when you see a flash here, this number here is just ranging up and down. Now that I've seen that, I'll probably be able to turn this thing back on. Okay, here's the text elements underneath. So there's the 3, 2, 1, go, and so on. Just turning on and off game objects. And does this one have a... Yeah, here's the alpha on the canvas group. Okay, so this is that fade up at the end game. It's just this number going from 0 to 1. Cool. And what else is in here? A HUD. So if I turn this whole thing on and off. Okay, it's the left-hand side, it looks like. So we have a lot of game objects in here. Lap time canvas. So this is the right side. You got current, best lap, finished lap. We only do one lap in this, but it looks like we can account for multiple laps here. In-game message. Oh, sorry, menu. So this is what happens when you press tab and you open up that pause menu. These are just some menu options you can do. And win game message. Display message. I'm not sure how this is being turned on and off. Either they're creating like a text component on the fly or there's another game object underneath it. But you see that there's many parts here. Is there like something at the top? No. Well, is this pool initializer? I could just tell by looking at these things that they have to deal with the UI. But I think I'll make my way into the UI since we've been at the pickup level and the objective level, and I saw in the objective here that it's manipulating some parts of the UI. I think I'll jump into the UI here. So this was at the objective level when it was saying reach checkpoint, and then we said, hey, how many targets are remaining? 0, 1, or more than 1. So it looks like we have some methods here: complete objective and update objective. Let's start here. Let's say we still have a few targets remaining. So we had 3, now we're down to 2. So this string is being created, notification text, and it's saying, so you notice it's a ternary operator here. So notification pickups remaining threshold. So it looks like they don't notify every time there's like a pickup gathered and these numbers change. It looks like we're not notifying the user every single time. You have to pass some type of threshold. So it's set to 1. Start sending notifications after remaining pickups when this amount is left. Let me just see if they're changing this. No, they're leaving it at 1. Okay. So is 1 greater than or equal to target remaining? So if we had 3 and we took 1, we have 2 left. So is 1 greater than 2? That would be false. So we're going to put in an empty string. If this ever gets to 1, or it's kind of strange, kind of weird, because if we get to 1 here, we would just go over to here. So it looks like I don't think there would be a situation where this actually gets true. But in either case, this notification text would be empty. And then we would update the objective, or call this update objective. And there's 3 parameters going into it. Looks like it's over on objective. So we pass in a descriptive text, a counter text, and a notification text. And then we call this on update objective. So it's a public unity action. It's sitting right on objective. So we're invoking something that's sitting on our own class so we can tell who's listening to it. So who's referencing this? Okay, so out here at the HUDs, they're listening to this. So when this gets evoked, over here, notification HUD manager is listening to it, and the objective HUD manager is listening to it. All right, I'll just pop these off. Let's look at these some more. All right, so now this is the connecting point with the UI, it seems like right here. So where are we? So if I go into game HUD, sorry, right here, game HUD. So here's the notification HUD manager, and here's the objectives HUD manager. So first off is to note is they have these little panels. So remember UIs at the start, there needs to be some type of canvas. So it looks like the canvas is probably here. Yeah, okay, here's the main canvas, the main UI for the HUD. And then the managers are up here, and so the manager is saying, who's my panel? What's my panel of UI that I'm responsible for? So panels in this kind of hierarchy of a UI. Move that over there. We have canvas, which sits at the top. And then you can start creating elements, but if your UI is complicated, you might choose medium level like organization, which is panels. And so these things don't actually like do anything or show you anything or interactive, but they just help when you have to organize large sections of your UI. And so it looks like they have the notifications and the objectives have their own little kind of panel section. And so here we are in a notification HUD manager. It's a model behavior, it's a component. And looks like we have on update objective, create notification, register, unregister. Let me just see what objectives like. Oh, here's going to be our first introduction to a dictionary eventually, so that's good. So I said that this is one of the most important data collections, so it's good for you to get exposed to it. So we have an awake here, it creates a dictionary, and we have a register, objective, unregister, on update. All right, so if I go back to my objective here, this update objective, when it gets called, it'll get called here. And it's saying, hey, is anyone listening to on update objective? I'm going to invoke it. So this is an action that's sitting here on objective. And what happened is the notification HUD manager registered itself. Who's calling this? Line 90. Hold on, I just want to know where this all starts. Oh, the objective goes out. Oh, okay. When the objective registers itself, it goes out to the objective manager and registers the objective. And then it goes out and it finds the objective HUD manager and the notification HUD manager. So find object of type. This is coming from the Unity engine. And this will go out into the Unity scene and seek to find a component object on any of the game objects that are of type objective HUD manager. It'll just return the first one that it finds to you, or null if nothing. So anyway, this variable right here is referencing that. And this debug utility handle error if null. So basically it says, okay, do a check. If this is null, then you're going to have to like create like an exception, like let the developer know that there's an issue, that this is null before you're actually running your game. Anyway, we get a link, a reference to the objective HUD manager, and then we go to it and we say, hey, register objective this to this objective, and the same with the notification manager. So the register object here is getting called from the objective, and then it's passing itself a reference to itself in. And then what it's doing is it's going back to the objective and calling on update objective. No way. Okay, it's registering to the action that's on there. All right. How loud, I guess. So it's basically like saying, this is a little weird. All right, so The objective goes out to the notification HUD manager, passes a reference to itself. What happens is it then goes back to the objective's action, says, hey, register this on update objective. This public method that's on notification hub, it like sends that to listen to an event on the objective. So it's a little weird, a little convoluted, but the objective says here a notification objective HUD manager. Here's a reference to myself, and then the notification, the objective HUD manager say, "Thank you. Hey, go back to your action, and then here's my method that I want to register with when you update yourself. So on update objective, I want you to put my method. So on update objective right here. So this method gets subscribed to the objectives on update objective. So this is why I'm always a big fan of clear and simple code, because it doesn't need to be that complicated. Anyway, this gets registered with the objectives on update objective, and I think you'll probably find the same thing on objective HUD. No, there's a lot more going on here. So it does that similar thing. It says, okay, objective, you want me to register you. Now go back to your action and register my method. But then it does a whole bunch of more other stuff here. So initiate the UI element for the new objective. So game object, objective UI instance. Looks like we're going to create some type of game object. So is the objective, is it optional? Question mark. Then we're going to generate the secondary objective prefab. In our case, we're not. We're going to generate a primary objective prefab. And then we're going to call get object on it. So this is, they're also doing like a little pooling thing. So I have to take a look. This is, yeah, so they're not calling like a prefab directly. They're going to this pooling object definition. So I think if I take a look at that, so here this primary objective objective prefab. If I click on that, it's actually going to a scriptable object. So this is a little different than what you're used to. Usually you write code and it's an inheriting element behavior, it's a component. This is the first time you can write code and it just sits in the asset, so it doesn't go into your game. This is used a lot with setting up situations where designers can tweak stuff. In this case, they're doing so pooling is very common in games where you don't want to just be creating prefabs a lot. So instantiating prefabs and deleting game objects is really expensive. So this idea of pooling is like, okay, let's create maybe 10 or 20 game objects and just turn them off when we first start, and just turn on a few and use them, and put them back, turn them off and put them back in our pool. So a very common situation is in like first-person shooters, when you're shooting, say, a machine gun, and all these bullets are flying through the air, you don't create each one all the time. You're pulling them from a pool. Otherwise, you would just crash your game engine. I don't know how far into this. I'm going to hold off since we only have like 20 minutes left. I'll cover maybe pooling on Tuesday or something. It's an important concept. And how they're doing it is another different type of important concept. So it's kind of a clustering of ideas that, like, what is a scriptable object and what is an object pool. So I'm going to hold off on that for right now.
Will we go over it next week on quiz class?
It depends where I get. I mean, sometime next week. I don't know if it. It depends how I'm right now moving through the UI, so I don't know when. But anyway, ultimately, what this thing will do, it will give you a game object. It won't just create game objects all the time. It'll come from a pool and be like, is there any deactivated game objects that we can turn on and give to the UI right now to use? Anyway, register object. So it's here, and then somehow we're going to get a game object. I'm not going to cover the pooling in the scriptable objects right now. And then if the objective is not optional, if it's mandatory, which in our case it is, so whatever we just created, grab its transform and set sibling index to 0. So basically it's saying this is like an ordering situation. So I think you've seen parenting and childing done with code. But remember, this is a parent of all of these are children, and then this is a parent of these children, and so on. So this is like a hierarchy of game objects. And when you talk about siblings, you talk about game objects that are at the same level. So like these 4 would be siblings to each other. And then you're talking about the ordering, like which game object comes before each one. Just drag and dropping. That is like set sibling index. So 0, sibling index 0 would be like the first child. This would be 0, 1, 2, 3. In any case, for whatever reason, it was important that this one goes at the top of that little section of the hierarchy. And then we have get the component on it. So what we can do right now, I think what makes sense is let's look at what is this game object? What is this UI game object? That would actually wrap this up nicely. So the objective HUD manager, it's pulling, it's ultimately the pool object right here. Objective toast primary finally gets to like the real prefab of whatever this thing is. So I'm just gonna pull it into my HUD. I think it would probably go into here. Oh, nice. So this is what the objective would look like. I just put 1 in here. And this one, there's like some boilerplate code text already in it. Destroy all the enemies, defeat all the enemies, description text, and how many. So this is what gets created, right? So it goes into our little rect transform hierarchy. And it has this little script here, which we're not going to get into for this class. And it has some other game objects underneath it. So a bunch of like images, background images and textures and text. So this will just defeat all the enemies. And this is probably that little bullseye thing over there. And so on. So these are all the little components. These are all like little game objects, a little breakdown of just this objective notification thing that comes up. So this is what is showing when it's like you have 3 objectives left, or when you complete some 2, 1, 0. And so anyway, that is what this is, this objective UI instance that somehow gets pulled from this pooling of game objects. And its transform gets set. And then it says go down into it, get the component, the objective toast. So this is definitely some UI lingo. So this is the script, objective toast. I don't know what, let's see, UI toast. I never really heard the meaning. A toast is an element that displays a brief, non-critical message in a way that attracts the user's attention without interrupting the user's tasks. All right, that's a toast. Anyway, this component, this objective toast, will get grabbed, referenced, and then some initialize will get called onto it. So I guess this passes in the title. If I come up to the top here, so somewhere this objective, the objective that got passed in. Okay, so we have a reference to the objective at this point. So grab the title, the description, get the updated counter amount, 321. Is it optional? Should we delay it? So all these things should be sitting, under here. Title, description, is it optional? All right. And so all this stuff is being initialized into the toast component, basically updating all the text in the images on that little UI game object. And then we get to add it to our dictionary. And then we update this table. So this table is here, whatever this UI table is. So I guess this table is just an organization unit. So it's just like, hey, if we have a lot of these objectives we need to show off, it's just an easy way to organize them in some type of column or table format. But I think it's more importantly, we just got exposed to the dictionary. So I'm just going to cover the dictionary, and that's going to be it for today. So Objective HUD Manager, notice it has a dictionary. So we've seen lists and arrays, and now we got a dictionary. And notice this is highlighted, so it's coming from systems collections.generic. It's a generic collection. And if I hover over it, it's definitely coming from there. And it's a generic, so what does that mean? We have our angled brackets. We have to define the types that get to go into it. And then we give it a name. And it looks like on awake. Once we declared it, but we didn't we didn't assign it, create it. So here it's saying give it a new dictionary. Notice it's the same type. The same types come in. In this case, objective and objective toast. And then we saw it used for the first time here when we register an objective. The dictionary adds an element of a dictionary element into it with the objective and the toast. This instance of objective and this toast. So before I explain what this one is specifically doing, let me just show you a dictionary. So a dictionary in its most simplest form is a collection of keys mapped to values. So you saw an enumeration. It's a customized list of strings mapped to integers. And a dictionary is kind of similar, where that for every every element you create, there's going to be a key that is mapped to a value. In this case, the key is a string, and the value is an integer. And so they're saying, hey, if I ever wanted to look up this key, I would get the value 45.
So would it be like a list with like two pairs of values?
Yeah. So the value of a benefit of an array or a list is that it's very easy to move through sequentially. You just list item after item after item. And for an array, it's very, if you know the element, like, oh, I know I want element 5, you can get it, instantly, basically. But the benefit with the dictionary is that you don't need to say, hey, go to element 5 and get me that. You can say, hey, go to key like Ali and get me that. So these numbers are kind of weird to map to names. I wanted something just a little bit easier.
They can the keys and anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, so you can't move. Basically, you don't just move through a dictionary in sequence. You don't just move from element 0, 1, 2, 3. Although now these days they wrapped dictionaries up and they kind of gave it that. The beauty of a dictionary is that you enter elements and then you can look them up almost instantly later. So I'm trying to find a better example that's a little simpler. So if you had this one might be easier. So this is a dictionary called Students, and there's three keys, three elements were created. Alice mapped to an age of 40, Bob mapped to an age of 37, and Chris mapped to 33. So later on, since you created these elements, you added these elements to the dictionary. Later on, you can say, "Oh yeah, how old is Alice?" And it'll like instantly tell you 40. Whereas if you put them in an array, how do you say how old is Alice? You'd have to be like, "Hey, go get me element 0." But how do you know zero map is meant to be Alice, and 0 is pointing toward 40? So it's not as easy to like look it back up. So there's benefits to arrays and lists versus dictionaries. The benefit of a dictionary is you can, once you create an element and you remember the key, and you're the one that created the element, so it should be pretty easy for you to remember the key, that you can look up that key instantly and get the value. So it's like instant lookup of an element. So here we created a dictionary where the key is going to be of some type of an objective. It'll be a reference to an objective object. And the value is going to be this toast component object. So in this situation, every single objective, we only happen to have one, but you could have more. But every objective object is going to have a UI element associated with it that's of type objective toast primary. And basically, you want to remember, you want to connect the objective to its toast component. So you can grab it instantly. So they're mapping a reference to an objective to a reference of a type objective toast. So down here, when we add it, because an objective was created, the objective went out to the objective HUD and said, "Hey, register me." And the objective HUD said, "Great." And the objective HUD went into its dictionary and said, "Okay, this objective had me register them." And then I created a UI game object. That UI game object has this component on it, this objective toast, that I'm going to be changing and updating a lot throughout the game. So I need to have a quick way to reference later on in the game whenever the objective calls out to me and says, "Hey, I've been updated. Hey, I'm an objective. I've been updated." And then me, the objective HUD manager, needs to go find the objective toast component, the UI element that has all the information that shows to the user about that objective. I need to grab it like instantly. I don't need to be like moving through a list and trying to find the element in the list of this toast.
So it's like an efficiency thing as well.
Yeah, it's purely because you get what they call constant time lookup for a key. So now they can go into the dictionary and try to get a value, and this is the key, the objective, and this toast component will be instantly given to you, basically. And so that's why they're creating a dictionary, because they're going to get these on update events that they're going to be subscribed to, and the objective saying, "Hey, I'm an objective, I've been changed." And then the objective HUD manager is going to say, "Uh-oh, I better instantly go into my dictionary and go find the toast component that relates to you." Because you can't do that with an array or a list. Now with an array, you're going to be like, "Okay, this objective is mapped to like element 2. Remember this number 2." And then I can look up the array at element 2. Like that's overly complicated. Just make a dictionary element that maps the objective to the toast. And the objective is reference is used to quickly look up the value, which is a toast component. So it's a new idea, and if you've ever been exposed to dictionaries before, um, it's going to take some while to get used to. But as you see them in action, you'll see them quite a bit in action in the UI. You'll see the benefit of them is that you can find this value, whatever you've associated. In this case, you've associated this toast component with this objective object. And you can quickly grab it. All right. So with that,